Next on the list, kidney failure. Thankfully, a plant-based diet can help prevent kidney failure. Actually, can even be used to treat kidney failure. Why? Because kidneys are highly vascular organs. In fact, that's why they're so red when you cut them open. And so, if the standard American diet is so toxic to blood vessels in our heart, brains, and pelvis, leading to heart attacks, strokes, and sexual dysfunction, respectively, what might it be doing to our poor kidneys? Well, Harvard researchers found 3 dietary risk factors, and only 3 dietary risk factors for declining kidney function. What they were measuring was called was measuring protein loss in the urine. You're not supposed to be losing protein in the urine, and when you do start losing protein, it shows that your kidneys are starting to fail. What are those 3 risk factors? Number 1 risk factor was animal protein. Number 2 risk factor, animal fat. Number 3 risk factor was cholesterol. So it wasn't protein intake overall, fat intake, but specifically animal protein, animal fat, cholesterol, all found, of course, only in one place, and that is in animal foods. Not only do those eating plant-based diets have better kidney function, just kind of on a cross-sectional basis, but you can even treat kidney failure with a pure vegetarian diet and see dramatic improvements after just 1 week. Next on the list is deaths from respiratory tract infections. You say, what possible role could diet play there? Well, obviously, you haven't seen my video, Kale and the Immune System, talking about the immunostimulatory effects of kale. Is there anything kale cannot do? So in my video, Boosting Immunity Through Diet, I featured this article, which found that it took older men and women between 65 and 75, right when they were getting their pneumovax vaccination, their pneumonia vaccination, just split them up into 2 groups. Half ate the regular diet, half ate just a few more servings of fruits and vegetables. A few more servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And this is what they saw. So a significant boost, this is the protective antibody response, the protective immune response in response to the vaccination, significantly better antibody response just by adding a few fruits and vegetables to people's diets. Can be that powerful. Next on the list, suicide is actually our 10th leading killer. And so last year, if you saw my talk, I talked about this study out of Loma Linda, which found that, again, at a snapshot in time, people eating more plant-based diets have significantly improved mood, less depression, less anxiety, less stress. But again, you can't prove cause and effect. What we need is kind of the gold standard of nutritional science, which is called an interventional study. You take people, change their diet, see what happens. And so they repeated the study and did that. So they took people, men and women eating the standard American diet, removed meat, removed fish, removed poultry, removed eggs as well. They thought it was the arachidonic acid, this inflammatory omega-6 fatty acid found predominantly in chicken and eggs. So that I'm thinking causes this neuroinflammation, brain inflammation, which is affecting mental health. But they removed all that products from the diets and found a significant improvement in mood within just 2 weeks. I mean, it can take a month or longer for some of these drugs like Prozac to take effect, and just saw a significant improvement after just 2 weeks on a healthy diet. Killer number 11 is systemic bloodborne infections. What role could diet play? Well, certainly, foodborne bacteria can kind of burrow through the intestinal wall and cause a blood infection, or in women, kidney infection can arise from a bladder infection. We actually just discovered where these bladder infection causing bacteria are coming from. We now have direct DNA fingerprinting proof that the source, the reservoir for these bladder infection causing bacteria is actually chicken. So women eating chicken colonize the digestive tract with these special bacteria that cause bladder infections, which then later crawl up into the bladder and can cause literally millions of bladder infections every year. You say, wait a second, you can't sell unsafe cars, you can't sell unsafe toys. How is it even legal to sell unsafe meat? Well, they do it by blaming the consumer. So this is a USDA poultry microbiologist who says, look, raw meats are not idiot-proof, right? They can be mishandled, and when they are, it's like handling a hand grenade. You pull the pin, someone's going to get hurt. Now, while some may question the wisdom of selling hand grenades in supermarkets, our poultry microbiologists disagree, saying, look, the consumer has the most responsibility, but just refuses to accept it. It's like a car company saying, yeah, we install faulty brakes, but it's your fault for not putting your kid in a seatbelt. The head of the CDC's Foodborne Illness Division responded famously to this kind of blame the victim attitude coming from the meat industry. She asked, "Is it reasonable? Is it reasonable that if a consumer undercooks a hamburger, their 3-year-old dies? Is that reasonable?" Not to worry, the meat industry's on it. They just got FDA approval for a bacteria-eating virus to spray on the meat. These so-called bacteriophages attack the E. coli and salmonella. Now, there's been concerns expressed that these bacteria-eating viruses may swap toxin genes between bacteria, especially consider the difficulties of preventing large numbers of these viruses from being released into the environments from the slaughter plants. It could also allow the meat industry to become even more complacent about food safety, kind of the quick fix argument about irradiation. Who cares how much fecal matter is in the meat if you can just kind of blast it with enough radiation at the end to effectively sterilize it, right? Now, the industry is concerned about consumer acceptance of these bacteria-eating viruses. May present somewhat of a challenge, so of course they're not going to label it or anything, but if they think that's going to be a challenge, check out their other bright idea. Yes, indeed, the effect of extracted housefly pupae on pork preservation, a sciencey way of saying they want to smear a maggot mixture on the meat. Wait, it's a low cost, and so think about it. All right, look, maggots live off of rotting flesh. At the same time, however, there have been no reports of maggots having any serious diseases. So hey, they must be filled with some kind of antibacteria, something, right? Okay, so let's take some maggots, grow them 3 days old, wash them off, towel them off, a little Vitamix action, and voila! Safer meat. We talked about kidney failure. What about liver failure? Well, we've known for literally decades that a so-called vegetable protein diet can be used to treat liver failure, which prevents the buildup of toxins that would otherwise increase in your system eating meat without a fully functional liver to detoxify your blood. Though I do have to admit, there are some people eating plant-based diets with worsening liver function. They're called alcoholics, living off potatoes and grapes and strictly plant-based, but not doing so good. It's not clear what Next on the list, essential hypertension, high blood pressure, essentially only found in people that eat meat. Again, we've known this forever. This is 74 out of Hopkins. That consumption of food of animal origin highly significantly associated with high blood pressure. And again, this is after the weight effects are removed. Fast forward 34 years, again, to the Adventist 2 study, the largest study looking at people eating plant-based diets, compared to those eating meat. And these were Adventist meat eaters, meaning they eat a lot less meat. They're a very healthy class of meat eaters. But if instead of eating meat kind of on a daily basis, you eat meat more on a weekly basis, like a Sunday roast or something, you may cut your risk of hypertension 23%. If you cut out all meat except fish, you just drop your risk 38%. Cut out all meat, period, you're just dropping your risk more than half. Though it does appear that you continue to accrue benefits the more and more plant-based one's diet gets. Right, but the bottom line, it's not all or nothing, not black and white. Even just cutting down can have significant effects on one's health. Look, same thing with diabetes. Look at this, stepwise drop in risks. The more and more plant-based one's diet gets. We see the same thing with obesity. Anything body mass index over 25 is overweight, and as you can see, the only dietary group, again, with those eating more on the plant-based end of the spectrum. How long does it take to lower one's blood pressure with diet? Here, 12 days. Dr. John McDougall took 500 meat eaters, put them on a plant-based diet for actually 11 days in this study, found significant improvement in blood pressure, so saw about a 6% drop in blood pressure. And these are people who came in with normal blood pressure, who came in with high blood pressure, got about twice that benefit, again, after just 11 days. Next on the list is Parkinson's disease. Can a plant-based diet reduce risk for Parkinson's disease? Well, we know that every single study ever, every prospective study ever done on dairy products and milk consumption, I know this is Wisconsin, but Every study that's ever been done found increased risk for dairy consumption. Why? Well, one possibility is that dairy products in the United States are contaminated with these neurotoxic chemicals. We have substantial evidence suggesting that exposure to pesticides and pollutants may increase the risk of Parkinson's. We have autopsy studies finding higher levels of these pesticides and pollutants in the brains of Parkinson's patients compared to people without Parkinson's. And some of those same compounds present in the brains of Parkinson's disease patients are present at low levels in dairy products. And they're talking about compounds like tetrahydroisoquinoline, which is Parkinsonism-related compound found particularly in cheese, actually. But even the levels in cheese are not very high. It's just that the concern is that these neurotoxins may accumulate in the brain over long periods, giving a whole new meaning to the term cheesehead. Couldn't resist. And the 15th leading killer is aspiration pneumonia caused by swallowing difficulties due to a stroke or Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all things we've already covered. So here we go. Top 15 killers in the United States, and a plant-based diet can help prevent nearly all of them. It can be used to treat more than half of them and even reverse the progression of disease in some cases for some of them, including our top 3 killers. Right? Now, look, there are drugs that can help too. You can take cholesterol-lowering drugs for the heart, sugar pills or insulin for diabetes. It usually takes a couple different blood pressure pills to lower your blood pressure. But that's the thing about this diet. It's one diet for all these. It's not like, oh, if you want to protect your heart, you do one kind of diet. If you care about your kidneys, no, the same diet affects all these different organ systems. And most importantly, you're treating the cause of disease. Sure, you can take blood pressure pills to kind of artificially lower your blood pressure, and which is good because you don't want end organ damage to your eyes and kidneys. But instead, how about treating the cause, which is this disease dysfunctional arteries, which is the reason you have high blood pressure in the first place. So instead of just kind of covering up and preventing kind of secondary prevention, how about primary prevention by improving one's diet? And also, what about side effects? Look, I'm not talking about a little rash here or something. Prescription drugs kill. An estimated 106,000 Americans every year. This is not deaths from overdose, deaths from medication errors, deaths from illicit drugs. This is just adverse drug reactions to prescription drugs as prescribed by physicians, wiping out 106,000 Americans every year. You say, wait a second, 106,000 deaths? Well, doesn't that mean that the 6th leading killer in the United States is doctors? The 6th leading killer is me. Thankfully, I can be prevented with a plant-based diet. Now, seriously, this is longest running study on vegetarians in North American history compared to vegetarians, those that eat meat, twice the odds of being on aspirin, sleeping pills, tranquilizers, antacids, painkillers, blood pressure medications, laxatives, of course, as well as insulin. So look, plant-based diets are great for people that don't like taking drugs, that don't like paying for drugs, and don't like risking drug side effects. Now, plant-based diets do have side effects of their own. Side effects include fewer diseases, fewer allergies, fewer surgeries, fewer drugs, fewer hospitalizations. So this is the surgeries. Fewer hemorrhoids, fewer varicose veins, even fewer hysterectomies. And not just the big killers, which I just talked about here, but also less diverticulosis, less rheumatoid arthritis, and fewer diseases overall. That's the important thing. This is the allergies data I just find fascinating. So compared to vegetarian women, meat-eating women have 30% more chemical allergies, 24% more asthma, more drug allergies, more bee sting allergies, more hay fever. The concern with this immune-boosting effects of a plant-based diet. You just added fruits, and vegetables, and all of a sudden you have a boosted immune system. Well, some people don't need a boosted immune system, like asthma, people with seasonal allergies. And so the concern was, well, maybe it's boosting too much. But what this data shows that no, we get just the sweet spot. We boost our immune system to lower our risk of infection, but there's less of the overshoot as well. We get right where we need it. This is the latest side effect of plant-based diets: fewer cataracts. That's what you get. fewer cataracts. The leading cause of vision loss in this country, now you can tell the study was done in Europe because the so-called heavy meat eating group, the heavy meat eaters, 1 or more servings a day. That was the heavy meat eating. But if you go from eating 1 or more servings a day to just half a serving of meat, you may drop your risk of cataracts 15%. So again, not all or nothing. Powerful effects, even just improving one's diet. But you want to do even better, cut out all meat. 21% drop, cut out except fish. Cut out all meat, period, just drop 30%. But again, it appears to benefits continue to accrue the more and more plants you can pack in one's diet. All right, so here we go. Top 15 killers, 16 killers. Right? Anyone have any suggestions for how we can solve the healthcare crisis? I do. Well, look, imagine if our country embraced a plant-based diet. Even imagine we just cut down on animal products. It's actually one country that gave it a try. Let me just close with this kind of case study. Finland, of all places. After World War II, started packing on the meat, eggs, and dairy. And so by actually the 1970s, the heart disease mortality deaths for Finnish men was actually the highest in the world, bumping us down to number 2. Look, they didn't want to die, so they got serious, all right? Heart disease caused by high cholesterol caused by high saturated fat intake. So the main focus of this strategy, reduce the intake of saturated fat. Where's saturated fat found? Well, here in this country, basically cheese, chicken, donuts. That's basically kind of the the top 3 sources here in the U.S. So what did they do? Well, a berry project was launched to help dairy farmers make a switch to berry farming. Wisconsin farmers, listen. And indeed, many farmers did switch from dairies to berries. Wouldn't that be cool? All right. These friendly cholesterol-lowering competitions. So like different villages, like who could get the lower average cholesterol, and they gave out prizes. All right. So how'd they do? Well, look on a population scale. Even if you can, lower disease rates just a few percent, I mean, you can save thousands of lives. But instead, remarkably great changes took place. What am I talking about? I'm talking about an 80% drop in cardiac mortality. 80% of the heart disease deaths gone. And with so many fewer heart disease deaths, so many fewer cancer deaths, men and women got to live a whole bunch of years longer. And look, Finland is no country of vegetarians. Right? It shows the power of even just decreasing one's intake of these kind of products. And now, of course, who's shooting for number 1 is the United States. So why doesn't our country embrace these same kind of guidelines? Well, I talked about some of the conflicts of interest in the Dietary Guidelines Committee, the people that actually write our official federal nutrition guidelines, and whether they're funded by the candy bar companies or the Sugar Association, or happen to be a member of McDonald's Advisory Council on Healthy Lifestyles, or this one's good, the Coca-Cola's Beverage Institute for Health and Wellness. Joanna Dwyer is my favorite. She's at Tufts, where I went to med school. She used to be the official Duncan Hines brand girl before she was official Crisco brand girl, and then went on to write our dietary recommendations for the country. If you actually look what the committee comes up with, what they write, you find that there is no discussion at all of the scientific research on the health consequences of eating meat. Everything I've talked about this last 45 minutes, it's not there, gone, right? Why? Well, if the committee actually discussed the research, it'd be unable to justify its recommendation to eat meat at all, as the research would show that meat increases the risk of chronic disease, contrary to the whole purpose of having dietary guidelines in the first place. So thus, by simply ignoring the research, the committee is able to reach a conclusion that would otherwise look improper. Right? They can't even talk about the science. What do we know? A plant-based diet, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, which means beans, chickpeas, lentils, and no meat, reverses heart disease, can prevent deaths from heart disease, may slow progression of certain cancers, etc. But again, they can't even talk about the science. And if I could just wrap up U.S. nutrition policy, it would be in this cartoon, which said, look, the new dietary guidelines have been released. They tell us to eat healthier, but not so healthy as to noticeably affect any corporate profits. Thank you very much. If anyone would like to share what you saw today, in fact, an extended version, I only was able to give 45, so the kind of the hour-long version, I have it on DVD for $10 in the other room, and I'll be around for half an hour answering questions at the table. All proceeds of all my books, DVDs, speaking engagements, all goes to charity, of course, and all my work is available free at nutritionfacts.org. Please check it out. Thanks again. Protein, animal fat, cholesterol, all found, of course, only in one place, and that is in animal foods. Not only do those eating plant-based diets have better kidney function, just kind of on a cross-sectional basis, but you can even treat kidney failure with a pure vegetarian diet and see dramatic improvements after just 1 week. Next on the list is deaths from respiratory tract infections. You say, what possible role could diet play there? Well, obviously, you haven't seen my video, Kale and the Immune System, talking about the immunostimulants, the protective immune response in response to the vaccination, significantly better antibody response just by adding a few fruits and vegetables to people's diets. Can be that powerful. Next on the list, suicide is actually our 10th leading killer. And so last year, if you saw my talk, I talked about this study out of Loma Linda, which found that, again, at a snapshot in time, people eating more plant-based diets have significantly improved mood, less depression, less anxiety, less stress. But again, you can't prove cause and effect. What we need is kind of the gold standard. Next on the list, kidney failure. Thankfully, a plant-based diet can help prevent kidney failure. Actually, can even be used to treat kidney failure. Why? Because kidneys are highly vascular organs. In fact, that's why they're so red when you cut them open. And so, if the standard American diet is so toxic to blood vessels in our heart, brains, and pelvis, leading to heart stimulatory effects of kale, is there anything kale cannot do? So in my video, Boosting Immunity Through Diet, I featured this article, which found that it took older men and women between 65 and 75, right when they were getting their pneumovax vaccination, their pneumonia vaccination, just split them up into 2 groups. Half ate the regular diet, half ate just a few more servings of fruits and vegetables. A few more servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And this is what they saw. So a significant boost, this is the protective antibody response, strokes and sexual dysfunction, respectively. What might it be doing to our poor kidneys? Well, Harvard researchers found 3 dietary risk factors, and only 3 dietary risk factors for declining kidney function. What they were measuring was called was measuring protein loss in the urine. You're not supposed to be losing protein in your urine, and when you do start losing protein, it shows that your kidneys are starting to fail. What are those 3 risk factors? Number 1 risk factor was animal protein. Number 2 risk factor, animal fat. Number 3 risk factor was cholesterol. So it wasn't protein intake overall, fat intake, but specifically animal.